Today's guest is Adam Lean. Adam is a former accountant turned two-time entrepreneur who built, scaled, and sold 2 businesses. While helping other business owners, he realized his passion was teaching and providing tools to business owners to help them make more money and have a peace of mind. He currently runs the CFO Project, a training company that trains financial professionals on how to offer an outsourced CFO and business advisory service. Adam and Finoptimal share a passion for helping accountants make more money and have a peace of mind. Hope you enjoy the episode. So you're on our podcast, but we did yours, Escaping the Accountant's Trap podcast. I wanted to start with a podcasting question. Is there anyone that you try to like emulate when you host the pod? Like where do you draw inspiration from for how you kind of get on the microphone and lead that podcast?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, honestly. I don't know who I try to emulate. Here's the thing. I just try not to make it boring.
Okay.
And that's hard to do with an accounting and bookkeeping podcast.
Yeah.
Because, I guess the subject matter can be boring, but I don't actually think it is when you do it right. When you use accounting to help people grow it grow their business, it's actually fun. But in terms of emulating, I really like Tim Ferriss and James Altucher's style, I think, because they dig deep into the why people ask or answer the way they do. You know what I mean? It's not like question, answer,
Yeah.
and then move on. It's like they dig deeper. And that's something that it's hard to do. It really is.
I'm going to
But
out myself. I have no idea who those people are. What podcast, where are they from? Jesse, you chime in.
I thought it was James Altucher. I guess I got that name wrong.
What did I say?
Altucher? I don't know. I definitely am not the authority here, but I know who you're talking about.
Altucher.
I feel like I've read I feel like I read something when COVID started. He wrote something about how, I can't remember whether he wrote something about how New York is really dead or how it's really not dead. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Which did he say?
Yeah, he said, well, actually, I know what you're talking about. He was saying it was not.
It's really dead this time.
Right. And then he came back later and basically sort of apologized or explained.
I haven't heard his podcast though.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's really good.
Does it have a segment called Jesse corrects the guest on how to say a name and then says, I don't remember exactly what that person said? Because that's a segment on our show.
Oh yeah, that's
the opening segment of.
I can also guess whether you've had a haircut recently.
That is Jesse's thing. That's where I had to keep him on his toes. Jesse, who do you think you emulate? Is there anyone that you draw from when you're hosting or just on the mic?
I'm always a guest, so
yeah,
no.
Fair. So the CFO Project, Adam, tell us a little bit about it. We obviously know what it is, but the guests listening to this probably don't. So just give us the overview of the CFO Project before we get into what is a CFO.
Yeah, totally. The CFO Project is a training company and community made up of accountants and bookkeepers and CPAs and enrolled agents that are all doing one thing: learning how to start and build and grow a CFO advisory service. Also, they can do this thing called what we call the Escaping the Accountant's Trap, where accountants, by and large, are trading time for money. And to make matters worse, they can't necessarily raise their fees because there's a lot of competitors out there. And so the way to escape the accountant's trap is by differentiating yourself from the competitors by offering what business owners really want, which is advice on how to have a growing business.
For sure.
And so that's what we do.
Advisory is a hot topic. I feel like it's something that everybody is slapping. Oh, I do advisory as well. And I think it comes in a lot of ways, shapes, and forms.
Totally.
I often give the example of, if you walk around New York City, there's a gourmet deli on every corner. Right. They're not gourmet delis. They just put gourmet to try to get people to walk in. And I think a lot of people are doing that today. So what is an advisor? Like, what is CFO services and advisory services, at least your definition? Because I know there are a lot floating around on the internet right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of definitions around what a CFO and an advisor is, and there's a lot of definitions of how you provide CFO and advisory services. And we are very particular in both. And we suggest that the definition of a CFO advisor, and by the way, I use CFO and advisory interchangeably. We
Okay.
often say CFO advisor as like one word kind of thing. But a CFO advisor is simply somebody that a business owner can trust to guide them on how to have a growing and successful business.
Interesting.
And that's it. And I point out to people that I did not use the word CFO, accountant, bookkeeper, forecast, ratio analysis, budgeting, books, taxes in that definition.
I
Because
like it.
business owners don't really care about all that.
Yeah, and I think an advisor comes in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. And I think, Jesse, we've kind of boxed ourselves in on our services side by saying we don't do advisory services, but that's wrong. We start with a thought partnership. Ours is just more advisory in terms of like people, process, and technology. Jesse, have you kind of, as we've had a conversation with Adam on his podcast, and I know Roman Villard made a good point of like advisory is baked into everything we're doing. If you're telling your client you should be using this tool and your process should be this way, that is inherently advisory services, and you need to make sure you're taking credit for that. Do you think that's kind of shifted the way that we think about it and talk about it in our own role and what we're offering?
To some extent, I think that at the end of the day, tools are just tools. If you're the tool maker, which we now are,
Yep.
there's that element. It's does the tool work and does it do what's advertised? If you're providing any measure of professional service, which we also certainly are in our CAS practice, no matter what you're doing, to your point, Tom, yeah, you are providing a service and someone's trusting your advice. They're paying for your advice and therefore are planning to take it or at least seriously consider it. My experience is the longer you work with a client, the farther that trust goes. And it's the scope of the trust. If you deliver good advice on a very narrow set of topics, hopefully the ones specifically that they hired you for, in our case, how to set up a good accounting system, then when they grow down the line, they're going to be more open to your advice on other things because you've already won them over. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about trust. It's a professional service.
You touched on two things there, and I want to get Adam's thoughts. One is, when you've spent more time with a client, it's more likely that they'll trust you. When you see accountants starting out their advisory practice, do you see them having more success going to their longest standing clients and saying, hey, I'm providing new service. Do you want to be a part of it? Or kind of rebranding how they market themselves and going after net new clients with this new big pitch? Is there any bias there in terms of what has worked better for those new advisors?
Yeah, hands down. If you have an existing list of clients, bookkeeping, tax clients, go to them first because there's this established relationship here. And here's the thing, if a business owners are craving somebody in their lives that they can talk to about business ownership things. They can't really talk to their employees. They can't talk to their banker. They can't bring home more baggage to their spouse. Their friends don't get it. There's not that many people in the business, and business coaches a lot of times don't understand the numbers and don't understand the implications of their advice to cash flow, which is the only thing that matters in business. So the business owners don't have that many people to talk to. So when their accountant says, hey, I was reviewing your tax returns or I was looking over your books and I spotted some red flags and some opportunities I see for you to grow your business. Can we hop on a phone call? Who would say no to that?
Right.
Because business owners are craving somebody they trust to guide them and tell them what to do to have a successful business. And if the numbers person, the person that they knows their numbers, because a lot of times profitability, cash flow is a source of embarrassment for business owners when it's not doing so well. But when their accountant, who already knows all these things about them, is telling them, hey, I would love to give you advice on how to have a successful business, they're going to pay attention. I mean, it's the easiest sell in the world.
It's I think you talk about imposter syndrome as part of your package, and imposter syndrome is a big thing that we talk about here. And in our interview process, we often ask candidates about imposter syndrome. I certainly have it. I think we all have it. I think a lot of highly successful people have it. Um, it's one of those things where, if you come from a large organization, I think there are a lot of lines when you join, right? Think about like a Fortune 500 company. You might join as the accountant, right? And you're a staff accountant, and then there's 7 different layers in the accounting department, and then there's the finance department, and there's this big hierarchy, and it's, we sit on that side of the lunch table, you sit on that side of the lunch table, don't come over here. I think it becomes very daunting for people to actually raise their hand and say, hey, I think I can help with this. It's like asking someone to dance at a middle school dance. Like if you've never asked someone to dance, you're going to be really nervous. You're going to kind of stand in the corner and keep making excuses to go get another, a glass of water, I guess, if you're in middle school. But once you do, you're like, hey, that's not that scary. I think I can do that. So
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess
I think you're breaking new ground here with the breadth of your analogy, but I do want to validate it, and also what Adam said about how people crave the advice, by saying that I think being a business owner is a fairly lonely place to be, right? The imposter syndrome is real because most of your peers are employees, and somebody who's got advice that seems relevant, even if you don't plan to take it or you just want to hear it, you want some free advice at first. I think I agree that there's a craving for it. In terms of how to get it if you're starting out, I think that it's more about timing. In my experience, somebody needs advice right now. If you look far enough in your network, somebody needs it right now. And if you can be there well for them in that time, then you're going to get referrals. I think professional services like doctors and lawyers are mostly about referrals. So
Interesting.
I agree.
We also talked about in the beginning, Adam, you were like, there's no, you don't use specific words when you bring up advisor. And I think we've found a little bit of a bias of where we advise our clients. When you see people starting out, there's so many things that you can kind of put under that advisory spectrum. Do you think there are certain things that somebody must offer as part of their advisory package? For example, like some people may be more biased towards process optimization, technology optimization, where others are much more like FP&A minded, where others might have more of like an M&A background. How do you kind of help people navigate where to start? Is it their interest? Is it their experience? Is it what the market is asking for? Because you can't be an expert of advising on all of those areas right away. How do
Yeah.
people kind of start to come out of their shell when they're taking on, let's say, their first advisory client?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think there's a couple things we have to keep in mind. Most businesses are small. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 9% of businesses make more than $1 million in annual revenue, which is crazy to think about. So most businesses are small. They're ran by business owners who are experts at what they do. So think like a dentist starts a dental practice. Somebody that MBA grad doesn't wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to start a dental practice today because I think there's money in that." No, people that are experts at what they do. Somebody that expertise in plumbing starts a plumbing business. So these businesses are ran by experts in their craft, not experts in business. And yet, think of like the plumber that starts a plumbing business. They start out, they are the plumber, they're the salesperson. They get clients because they are trustworthy. They're the business owner and they're selling. They get clients. Then they add on a second truck and they have another, a couple employees, and all of a sudden they have an office staff. And then, 5 years later, they're doing, $2 million and they have, 10 people on the team. But the owner mentally is thinking, I'm really good at plumbing. I'm not so sure I'm good at growing this business and keeping this huge thing afloat.
Yep.
And business is a business is all predicated on you having cash flow. And so I don't think business owners really know what they're looking for in advisory services. So when an accountant comes along and just says, "Hey, let's have a conversation because I think that I can help you grow." And then through this process of helping of selling the business owner on your advisory service, if you can make them know that you are a financial person that you can trust to just guide you and will understand the numbers for you, then I think that goes a long way than starting out by saying, "I do, these 3 deliverables for you every month, because the business, that's just going to fall flat. People buy on emotion and they justify with logic later. So if you can appeal to their emotions first, the fact that they're insecure and they're scared, they're overwhelmed, they don't know numbers and they don't know what they're doing, and they have this real imposter syndrome, then I think you'll go way farther.
Interesting. I think something that came out of there for me is, they're an expert in what they do, but they're not, they're pretty much a novice in what you do. Right. And even if
Totally.
you're not an expert in all areas of finance, there's some way that there's so much low hanging fruit if they haven't had this already. I mean, this is something I did for one of my friends recently. He was a chef, and, he got a new job, and they're like, food costing is really important to us, like making sure that we hit specific metrics of how much the food costs and how much we sell it. I made him a Google sheet, and I'm basically like, type numbers in here and it's going to tell you what you're going to do over there. And the entire company, their minds were blown. They were like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't even know how we were doing it in the past, right? Like once a month, they'd pull a bunch of paper and do some numbers and say, it's not that great. I don't know how we make it better. And that was, I'm a CPA, but like, it wasn't any groundbreaking accounting or finance. It was, hey, here's how you use a Google sheet to make your business a little bit better. And that little like freebie, right, opens the door to, wow, we probably could use a lot more of this.
I love that so much.
I'm curious, like in terms of the accountant to CFO, the journey, right? Like, and Jesse, I'll kind of go to you on this, because you started your career as really, I forget, a FinOps associate, or no, sorry, that was at DE Shaw. What was your title at LimeWire?
CFO.
First title.
Oh, at the beginning, business analyst.
Business analyst. So you went from
Yeah.
business analyst all the way to CFO. And I'm sure along the way you had some imposter syndrome of like, well, I've never, right? So like, how did you, was it just trial by fire? Or how'd you kind of make that leap? Because I think a lot of people that are kind of going through the CFO project are experiencing a lot of those same emotions of, I was hired to do this, now you're asking me to do that, and there's this chasm that I have to just jump. How do you remember how you did that, and like kind of like what you felt going through that transition?
I do. I think having a good mentor, someone who knows what a CFO is supposed to do, and a management team, when you're in house, the CEO needs things from their CFO. Hey, this is what a CFO does. Here's some articles. Here's read this. Here's a course. Take this course. And I think there's also, yeah, am I doing this right? Am I doing, and maybe not. Definitely some of that imposter syndrome. And then there's also just the ambition and hubris, or I should say, just the brashness of youth. Oh yeah, sure, I'll be a CFO. So I think it's a combination of all those things, puffing up your chest and dressing like the job you want, so to speak, and also looking to other people to tell you what they need. And I think clients do that too. Hey, this is what I want from you.
Right. You don't have to make the menu. They're telling you exactly what they want. Just go do that. I'm curious.
I do think, Adam, tell me if you agree, they buy with emotion. They do follow up with a careful analysis when they're thinking about the trade-off for the dollars they're paying you. I think advice is a when you need it. It's a when I need it type of service. Whereas the ongoing bookkeeping, this is what's nice about CFO services. There are things that you need more frequently. There's a quarterly board meeting, right? There's something that's more frequent and regular that you can schedule service around without needing to. You don't want to necessarily fall into the trap of just being an hourly advisor. I'll call you when I need advice, and then I'll pay you by the hour. I'm giving you these deliverables. I'm throwing in this advice, and it's a nice subscription business.
Yeah. We do not recommend fractional CFO services in that respect. We recommend what we call productized CFO services, where you're getting the best of both worlds. You're selling a service, which means you could charge a lot for it while delivering it as a product, meaning, you're telling the client, these are the 5 things I'm going to do for you every month. And the entire point is to ensure that you have a growing and successful business. However, they define success and how we define success, which is cash flow. In other words, Mr. or Mrs. Client, if I don't make way more cash flow than what you're paying me, then I would fire myself because that is my purpose here. And that message goes a long way because you're letting the client know that you're helping them have a growing, successful business. And the word successful is defined very clearly. It's defined in how they view success. Because some business owners say, I want to be able to use my business to travel, say 3 months out of the year. Well, okay, so if I can help you do that, get more cash flow to allow you to do that and to replace yourself with additional payroll while also improving the definition of what I call success as a financial person, which is you generating more cash flow every single year so you can expand your business, grow it. It's worth more. If you sell it one day, would you be happy with that? And they're going to say, of course. And it's very definable in black and white. And at the end of the year, every year, you can show the client progress.
I like the idea of like having yourself and the client define what success is, because I think a lot of marketing fails in that aspect as well. And it's something that I constantly struggle with as I'm talking about how to market our apps. If you look at every app, it's just like close faster. What does that even mean? Like, what emotion is that? Right. And you can't assume that everybody wants to double your business. Some people don't want to double their business. They want to cut their time spent in half and keep the business as it is right now. Right. Like you said, some people want to go on vacation a lot more. Some people want to retire and keep the business operating without them. And I think defining what success is up front with your client is great advice, because if you just assume that it's all the same, you're going to have some people that are very unhappy with the outcome, despite you being happy with what you kind of put into it.
Totally agree.
Adam, what do you see as like the number one thing preventing people from starting down the path with you guys, right? Like maybe they're interested in it. Hey, this is something that's great, but I'm not going to do it because. Where are the hesitations and the breakdowns in that process?
I really do think it's a mental hurdle that a lot of people have to overcome. And I do think the imposter syndrome is real. I think a lot of people think there's no way that I can call myself a CFO. I'm just a bookkeeper, just an accountant. I know how to do taxes. I know how to do auditing. I know how to do bookkeeping. I don't know how to help a business grow because I've never done it necessarily. And I think a lot of accountants out there take, I think that I think a lot of us underestimate how much we can help a business owner who doesn't understand numbers and financials. We take for granted the fact that we understand numbers. And the only thing that really matters to a business at the end of the day is generating positive cash flow on a regular basis. That's the only thing that matters. You could be the best bookkeeper, the best accountant in the world. And if the client that you're working on fails, then really what was the point? Like you could be the Titanic, the accountant for the Titanic, and you could be recording the past. Oh, the ship's now listing at 180 degrees, 250 degrees, 300 degrees. And then the ship sank. What was the point?
Yeah.
The captain didn't care that they had clean books. The captain wanted a ship that was afloat and kept going. And that's way more interesting. And I think the thing that prevents accountants from doing that is this idea that they can't be a CFO. Well, can you be a CFO for Coca-Cola tomorrow or Microsoft or Apple? Probably not. You need years of experience and training to navigate complex business financial transactions to do that. But can you be the CFO for a $2.5 million plumbing company? Absolutely, because these people need somebody like you, somebody that can understand numbers, but can also care and have empathy and be a trusted advisor and have influence over their clients. There's a lot of bigwig CFOs that would fail at being the CFO for a small business because they can't get a client to take action. You have to have the ability to be empathetic and to be a confidant, somebody that can just listen.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
what we're doing.
I love that. The imposter syndrome is really interesting to me. As you were talking, I was almost thinking if you guys could maybe you could offer like some sort of like case study where it's like, do you think you can't do it? Like, read this blurb and answer these 5 questions. And like, basically, if they get that, you're like, hey, guess what? You just advised a real client. This is a real scenario. You
Yeah.
can do this, right? Like, it almost a little self-test to put it more tangibly, like, this is what you need to do. Guess what? You didn't even start the course yet, and you can already kind of do
Totally.
this.
It's funny that you said that, because we actually have that. We do free master classes.
Okay.
If we do 4 master classes a week, every single one of those master classes has a version of what you just said at the very
Oh,
end.
there you go. There you go. All right. So, not that good of an idea. You already had it.
No, that was a fantastic idea.
Come up with something else. Do you find, and this is me coming from a place of bias, because like when we talk to accountants and try to, get them to use new software technology, change their process, it's always the situation of, this is great, I just don't have the time to
Yeah.
do it. Do you find that the accountants, struggle prioritizing themselves, right, and their business over just checking the boxes on their client checklist? And how do you help them overcome that and dedicate time to something like the CFO project?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We get that a lot, because they're like, there's no way I have the time to take on additional work. Well, the problem is that the work that a lot of accountants are taking on is very low value in terms of how much you're getting paid. The average accountant in this country makes $73,000 a year. That's nuts, considering the experience and value that we could bring to their clients or to their boss or whatever. That's very, very low. I mean, I was talking to one of our members, actually. He came to us, he had over 350 tax clients, and he was working like 60 hours a week during tax season. He was working a lot more. And he's like, I just cannot go through another tax season. And he wasn't charging his clients that much money, and they were only paying him once a year, for
Yeah.
taxes. And he was hoping that those people would come back next year. Well, now he completely sold off his tax practice, and now he has a handful, I think about 10 CFO advisory clients, and he's making almost double what he was making with the accounting clients, because he is leveraging his time for more. But I think there's also value in, provide. I think there's value in offering accounting services while being efficient at it
Yes.
as well. Like, I think you've got, if you're the only workhorse in your company, then you own a job. You don't own a machine that makes money. I mean, if
You
you're a
own a job.
manufacturing plant and you are the machine that has to be there every day for the product, the widgets to be produced, then you're a machine. You're a job. You don't own the job. You don't own the
Interesting.
plant. And you need to develop people on your team and give them systems, which is what I love about what you guys are doing. You're giving systems to people so the accountant can act as the orchestrator, the orchestra conductor,
The conductor. Yeah.
while people are playing the parts of the, playing instrument.
100%. That's why I think, what you guys are doing is very interesting. It's very complementary, right? We're trying to help them in 2 different ways. I think a lot of folks look at bookkeeping as a loss leader. I'm just going, I've heard this from many people who they make their nut off of the advisory services, and they go, I'm just going to do bookkeeping because I know if I offer it, it's a control thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that the bookkeeping is done correctly, which I respect, but then it's also I just have to do it so that I can also charge for this. And the bookkeeping is inefficient, and they're probably not making a good margin on it, and they don't care. We're like, hey, you can make it extremely efficient and extremely profitable, and you can invest in these advisory services. You can take over the world. And whether
I agree.
whether that means going on more vacation or, doubling, tripling your business, all of those things are possible. We like to think of ourselves as giving the wheels. Like, there's that famous cartoon of the cart with the square wheels being dragged. Like, we're trying to give you the wheels so that you can actually move the cart forward, and hopefully move it directly towards a path of offering highly profitable services that better leverage your time.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Bookkeeping should never be a loss leader. It should always be a if you're like a retail store like Walmart. I mean, I read Sam Walton's autobiography. He had loss leaders in the real sense. Like, he would literally sell toothpaste and toilet paper for less than what it costs them just to get people in the store. We don't need that. We
Right.
already, if we could attract clients through our bookkeeping or tax or advisory services, we have them already. If we're going to add on or upsell advisory services, we don't need to get them in the store. They're already in the store. Because Sam Walton would use those loss leaders to advertise in the local paper that, hey, you should come in to get toothpaste for 29 cents. It's a very different world. We should not be undercharging for bookkeeping or tax or advisory services. It should definitely be a profit driver. And if you make it more efficient, then it's scalable, because the definition of scalable means you can increase revenue without an increase in cost. And a lot of times when accountants take on bookkeeping clients or tax clients, their revenue goes up because they have a new client, but their time goes up in tandem. Well, if you can scale by revenue going up without increasing your cost or payroll cost in tandem through efficiency, then yeah, you'll light the world on fire.
That's awesome. I think to wrap up, a big takeaway for me here, and I think something that's been helpful for me is when you're going through a sales process, right? You want to understand what success is for them, right? You talked about it in terms of like establishing that with your client. But even when I have a services call, like many of the accountants or bookkeepers listening to this might, I don't start by, here's what we do, right? I always say, like, what I offer, what FinOptimal offers, comes in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. And I'm not here to convince you to hire us. You tell me what you're looking for, and I'll tell you if I can help you. And if not, I'll point you to someone who can. But when you let somebody in their own words explain what they're looking for, you'll find the golden nuggets of, hey, that's what they care about. Like, yes, I know that it's going to take this many bookkeeping hours, these systems and this advice to get there, but pluck those golden nuggets out. And I think even having check-ins with your clients, if you're exploring offering fractional CFO services, it's not just how have we been doing, it's where do you want to go? Like, how often do you have that conversation with your client of where's the business going? What's your goals for 5 years, right? And you might find those opportunities present themselves from clients that you didn't expect to want that additional service from you.
Totally. I 100% agree with you. I had a client one time, a long-term client. He was a doctor. He owned an $8 million colonoscopy screening doctor's practice.
Nice.
He was making money. His goal wasn't more money. He wanted to be published in the New England Journal of Medicine for his new invention of a new way of doing colonoscopies. And that was expensive to do. And he needed time to do it, so we needed to replace him. That was his goal. I could have never put on a business card or a website or a Facebook ad, hey, if you're a colonoscopy doctor, then that never would have happened. It wasn't until I asked him, what do you want? And then related my advisory service to how I could help him get what he wanted. That was what made the sale. Totally agree with what you're saying.
Jesse, I'm thinking of the spectrum that we always talk about.
I think that it reminds me, you'll have to forgive me, Adam, you brought up, the colonoscopy thing, which made me think of the Seinfeld episode about the proctologist, the ass doc, which then made me think about our spectrum, accounting as a service, AASS. No, AAS.
AAAS, accounting as a service, the AS spectrum. We talk about this all the time.
Spectrum. Where we fall out and where you fall out are two kind of very complementary places on the AS spectrum. I think that's a great way to kind of tie this whole thing together.
Totally.
Who knew a colonoscopy story would bring us home?
Totally.
Which is to say, you should have, by the time you turn 40 or 50, you should have, someone take a look at your ass spectrum and see where, Sorry, I belabored it. Did I take it too far, Tom?
No, you didn't take it too far. You could have gone a little. I think you could have gone a little harder on it. I would have turned up the heat on the ass spectrum. We did an episode on the ass spectrum, Adam, because there's so many things out there. It's like CAS. It's like CAS, CAAS, and then it's bookkeeping, and it's bookkeeping and advisory, and it's advisory, and it's all of these words, like I kind of brought in the beginning. we have this spectrum that we're creating, and I think it's confusing to the buyer of like, well, what are you providing? Because I've
Totally.
seen advisors who do bookkeeping in a manual way, and I see bookkeepers who are already providing advisory services, and they're calling themselves bookkeepers. And there's kind of this like product differentiation issue that we have because people use sexier words. So the joke of it is kind of the S spectrum, and it's where do you fall on it? So I'm glad we
Only a
brought it
joke
back
if
there,
you make
but
it a joke, Tom.
it's true, but it's a joke. Anyway, Adam, anything else? Where can the people find you? They like what you said. They're interested. Tell us a little bit more about where the audience can find you.
Yeah, the CFOproject.com, CFOproject.com. If you at the very top, click on free training, and we have 4 different trainings that you could take. We do them literally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, every day at 3 p.m. And there's different trainings. Pick one, and then we'll help you figure out if this is even right for you. If advisory services are right for you and your firm, or if you're an employed accountant and want to get rid of your day job or do this on the side. We even have a training called Side Hustle CFO. Figure it out if this is even right for you, and then go from there.
Love it.
Which it probably is. Do it as a side hustle, accountants. I did it as a side hustle in the beginning for years.
There you go. That's the final plug. Do it. Go right now.
Do it.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
Appreciate it.
Goodbye.